In 1994, the Jacksonville Jaguars were awarded an NFL expansion team. And one of their very first moves was to hire the youngest ever NFL play-by-play announcer, Brian Sexton. We're talking one of 32 positions currently in the NFL. Brian's called more than 400 professional football games. He's hosted more than 1,000 coaches' radios and television shows. But Brian's not just a radio voice. Brian's story today you're going to see is about finding your frequency, your clarity, and your vision when things change in your life. When that dream job is taken away from you and you have to put yourself back together and figure out what you're going to do and who you're going to be. Welcome back to the What You More podcast. I'm your host, Quinton Harris. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Brian Sexton, former voice of the Jacksonville Jaguars. To me, you'll always be the voice of the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I'm very excited to have you on the show today.
Well, I'm excited to be here. No one's ever called me a special guest, so I'm feeling pretty good right out of the gate, Quinton. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here. And, there's a couple things about this. I want to establish this right out the gate. We're talking one of 32. Yeah. Like, this is really, I had a former coach on here, and one of 32, when you let that sit in for a minute, I just want the audience to take that in as we get started. This is not your everyday job that we're about to talk about or career that we're about to talk about.
No. And to underline that, I got it at age 25. And I got it with an 8-man high school football tape where I was the play-by-play announcer and the analyst. And I read my own commercials that I had sold earlier in the week live in the rain in southeastern Kansas. The thought when I turned that tape over to Mr. Weaver when he asked for one, that would ultimately lead me to an NFL job, well, it was beyond comprehension that it did. So it's just, if you work hard and you take advantage of every opportunity. Because that night I was climbing the water tower in Erie, Kansas, to hang my antenna, to stand in a crow's nest and call 2 8-man high school football teams. I never thought that would get me the job. I hoped that the learning experience would, but I didn't know that tape would directly get me there. So it was one of 32, and it was, to me, the most interesting of circumstances. And I've been blessed. I've really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, I can tell how much it's meant to you. I've heard you talk before, and that's why I'm excited to kind of get into this. But something that I think is interesting for our audience, guys, he's talking 8-on-8. Like in Florida, we think that's spring football, popcorn. This is high school football, 8-on-8 in Kansas. And you got to, talk about the depths of what you had to do. Climb water tower in the rain, do your own commercials. That just kind of speaks to start. And a lot of times I always joke with people that are new or getting hired. It's like, if you want to be the chairman of an organization, you can't just be hired in and then a year later, you're the chairman or you're the president of the organization. It takes time to build up. And I know from your past, you were doing this for quite some time, free.
Oh, 100%. Listen. When I was in college, I drove my parents crazy because I was going to Topeka or to Kansas City. And Lawrence, for people who are geographically unfamiliar with the middle part of the country, Lawrence was right in between. Mm-hmm. And I was just putting money into my car and buying my own dinner. But I wanted to intern at 2 stations at the same time because I figured if I was willing to do twice as much as the average intern, as the average college student, someone would see that. Right. Well, it led me to a little 3,000-watt daytime radio station in Chanute, Kansas. So clearly, nobody saw it. But I walked away with the experience and with the knowledge that if I was going to make it in broadcasting, I was going to have to be the reason why. It wasn't just going to be talent. It wasn't going to be somebody making me. It was going to be me taking my talent, crafting it, figuring out what I did wrong, refiguring it, and going.
Yeah. What's interesting about this next portion, you don't have to be a Jaguar fan to appreciate what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
Maybe you're an NFL fan. Maybe you're just a sports fan enthusiast in general. Maybe you love radio. But this part right here, I love this part. So Jacksonville gets announced an expansion team.
Yes.
And this was in 1990.
Well, they were awarded the Jaguars November 30th, 1993.
93.
Which I have to, just quick aside, that was the day that I had a non-compete from one station to another in Wichita, Kansas. Long story, but that was the day my non-compete ended and I could go back on the air in Wichita. So it's a meaningful day for me.
Right. So you're making a decision of which way you're going to go.
You bet.
Jacksonville's announced this. You come in, and when you tell this story, it's such ground level. You were a part with the owners, with Mr. Weaver, with the family, with the NFL, out of a trailer.
Trailers that were hitched together, and when you got inside, you could go seamlessly between the trailers, and it felt like you were in an office. But I walked out of the trailer every day thinking this is an interesting place to go to work.
Right.
What I like to tell people, Quinton, is I watched a stadium, a team, and a city grow together in that 1994 to early 1995 window. Because when I got there, I think there were 18 or 19 employees. There were a couple of coaches. There were a couple of people in marketing. Mr. and Mrs. Weaver were around there. But there were no players. Right. I mean, there was no players, and a skeletal coaching staff that Tom Coughlin had gotten there. So I watched that grow, and obviously players were added shortly afterwards. The stadium was under construction when I first arrived here. It was the upper west deck, and that was it. It was a mud pile, and so literally, I kind of know where everything is in that stadium because I watched it go up and I walked it every day.
Right. Well, I mean, you could tell that you are attached to this team from the ground level, right? And I mean, if you can't hear that by now in this episode, rewind it and play it back because you absolutely are you are part of the Jacksonville Jaguars at this point, and you're watching it grow. Yeah. And then you have the opportunity to, I wouldn't say audition, but basically audition to be the voice of the Jaguars by turning in that tape that you were describing earlier to find out who was going to be the voice.
Well, so when I came here, it was against the wishes of my parents. My dad said to me that broadcasting is a job for people with talent, Brian. So I wasn't willing to take my teeth off that bone. And my dad is one of my best friends. And we laugh about it to this day. And I don't think he was trying to motivate me. I think he was trying to scare me into finding another career. He wanted me to go somewhere where I could sell something and raise a family. And at the time I'm in my early 20s. That sounded boring to me, right? What sounded exciting to me was crafting a broadcasting career and building something. So I came down here and they said, hey, what would you think about doing our sports show in the afternoon? Done, right? Hey, what would you think about doing the Tom Coughlin show in the fall of 1994? Done. I didn't ask what time the show was. I didn't ask how much I was going to be paid, which, by the way, it was zero, right? I just asked, when do we start?
Right.
And I was so, desperate's the wrong word, determined, driven, but there was some desperation there. And I think in professional football, that hunger, that desperation is what makes a person great. You have to have that. And I had it. And so they asked me for a tape. What? But my opportunity, Quinton, was getting in front of Tom Coughlin every Thursday night and doing my best to do a show that he felt was worthy of his time. Because if you know anything about Tom Coughlin, and he is a terrific human being, a wonderful man, Tom put a premium on every second counting. So when you were going to do a radio show with Tom, you better be prepared.
Right.
We would meet for an hour on Wednesday to talk about what we were going to talk about for 55 minutes on Thursday night. Now, that was before we had players, and he had time to talk about those things. But I came out every Thursday night ready to go. And it was that moment, right, where the Jaguars said, hey, this is a young guy, has a little vocal talent. Maybe we should investigate him being the play-by-play guy. I had no reason to think they would ever ask me. They had 100 tapes from guys who had called USC and the University of Cincinnati and the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, they had big-time broadcasters because it was the 30th NFL franchise. It was in North Florida, which is very appealing. But there's, at the time, one of 30. So a lot of people wanted it. There was no way I expected to get the opportunity. But it did.
It came and it happened. And the thing that I want our audience to take away here, and this is a topic that we get all the time on our YouTube channel, all the time on our socials, is this ideology that I do all the work, but, the executives yield all the return. And why would I work harder? Why would I put in more energy and effort if I'm not getting paid for that extra energy and effort? And I love this story because it's the exact answer that each person should listen to.
It's equity, right?
It's equity.
I may have been an employee of the Jaguars, but I was really an employee of Brian Sexton, Inc. And I try to tell, especially high school kids, you will always work for yourself,
100%.
Even if the revenue stream comes from someone else, right?
Right.
You will always be your own employee. And when you look at it that way, you are building something every day. You have equity in the product, which is you, and you will go forward and create more opportunities beyond just the job that you have. If your mindset is, it's about me, being the best version of me. Now, it sounds selfish to some people in today's day and age, but when I say it's about me, good or bad, right? Positive or negative, equity or, man, I got to pay somebody this month, right? I own it. I own what works. I own what doesn't. I own what people like, and I own what people don't like. That's always been my mindset.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I hope the audience really kind of hones in on that tidbit right there, because that's real important in today's world. We don't see a lot of that anymore. No. And, some people argue about this entitlement generation that may be out there, or they may say, hey, I'm not entitled. I just think people want me to do more and pay me less. And there's a big push-pull there. We see it all the time on our channels, people arguing about this and kind of stating their claim. But, I love this because this isn't a story, a fairy tale. This is a story of hard work, effort that got and yielded a result. And I just want the audience to understand that, because I think that's really important.
Let me add something to it. When I was a senior at KU, I went to St. Louis, which is where my family's from, and spent a couple of days on spring break with family and friends, and was talking to an aunt of mine about my dreams and aspirations. She knew that my dad was no big proponent of me being a broadcaster, and she and my dad were just antagonizing each other enough that she said, you know what? Bob Costas lives around the corner, and his son Keith is in Kelly, my cousin's kindergarten class. Let's go knock on his door. Right? So Bob Costas looked at my resume, and he called my dad. He didn't mean to call my dad. He was meaning to call me, but I was in Lawrence, and I had my parents' address and phone number, and he called my dad and said, I think your son has an opportunity. Tell him I called. My dad asked him a few questions, back and forth. You have to be willing to knock on doors where you think no one will answer you in order to give you that opportunity to either be told no or yes. Bob told me, I don't have a job for you, right? I've got some advice that I can help lead you. Don't be scared to go into radio as opposed to TV. And along the way, what I learned was that the best of the best, Bob Costas, who went to KMOX radio from Syracuse University almost overnight, right?
Right.
When people said to him, gosh, you're young. How did you get here? You didn't pay your dues. He said, nobody ever asked me to pay my dues. Nobody ever said I had to pay dues to take my talent and put it to work. And that was the way I approached it as well. When people would say, you're young, you haven't paid your dues, you don't deserve this job, I looked at them and said, I have the job because I was willing to pay dues that you don't know anything about. I'm willing to go to Chanute, Kansas, right, and Wichita, Kansas, and leave one job for another, which involved me working in a chicken restaurant to pay my bills, right? When my twin brother's in law school.
No one sees that.
And no. And my mom and dad are saying, why don't you go back to school like your brother, right? Your brother's married. I had 2 girlfriends, right? I mean, I was not all put together, but because I was so focused on what I wanted, I was willing to look forward and look past where I was to get to where I wanted to be. And that's the lesson for young people. Knock on doors, ask questions, don't worry about what other people say. But if you have a vision for yourself, and you and I talked about this when we met a couple of weeks ago, if you have a very clear vision for who you are, where you want to go, and how you intend to get there, you can get there. It's going to change. It always does. Yeah. Life intervenes. But I set out on that path with a very clear vision of what I wanted, and that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, well, I took 2 things away from that, and there's a lot to unpack right there, but the 2 things I took, if you're listening, number 1, advice is just as good as an opportunity. Are you willing to listen to the advice?
Yeah.
And then number 2 is, it doesn't matter what your age is, it matters, are you willing to put in to get what you want out of it? And I love that right there. Yeah. I love it.
Well, the age thing has gone away in recent years because of all the young tech billionaires who had good ideas. I mean, Steve Jobs had not reached the level of success with Apple by the time I graduated from college in 1991. But now, dues, time, age, none of that matters. Do you have a good idea? Do you have a dream? And do you have the drive to go and do it?
Yeah. Do you have the work ethic? So back to that dream, you become the voice of the Jaguars, and you're on campus per se, and you're involved in the day to day. So as you're doing this, inaugural year kicks off, you're going and you're there for 20 plus years after that. I've heard a lot of the stories. I've heard of a lot of the things. Obviously, I think you are very, very near and dear to Tom Coughlin. You guys have a wonderful relationship.
I'm grateful for that.
How about you and the players? What was the relationship like with you and the players throughout the years?
That's a great question. It's an interesting one because when we first got started, I was just about the same age as Tony Baselli, who was the first ever draft pick. And I can remember I went in on Sunday morning. The draft back then was Saturday and Sunday. And I went in on Sunday morning, and somebody said, hey, Baselli's already here. Grab the camera and the microphone. We got to go interview him. And I'm like, where's the weight room again? Right? I mean, we hadn't even moved into the stadium fully, right? We were still in the trailers part way. And I remember running and dodging, equipment and boxes, and, we're here at the weight room. And I walked in, and here's Tony Baselli, who is now Hall of Famer, 6'7", and Angie, who was a Miss California candidate, in the flowing blonde locks, just a gorgeous woman. And the two of them are standing, and I'm just a little bit older than them. But here they are at the top of the world. And I'm thinking, I'm never going to have anything in common with these guys, right? They're never going to have to worry about paying a bill. They're never going to have to worry about whether they've got enough money for groceries that month. I didn't think that they would be very relatable. Now, fast forward 30 years, Tony's a dear friend and very relatable because he's had his share of successes and failures, and they've helped shape who he is. So over the years, I looked at them, first of all, as a peer because I was the same age. And then as I got older and they got younger, all of a sudden, I had some more wisdom to offer these guys, right? And now I'm 55 and the average player is 25.
Right.
Right? The relatability kind of goes away because they're young and they're on social media and they're even, the lowest undrafted rookie free agent makes $500,000, walking right in the door. So there's a lot of money on the table and I don't lead the same lifestyle. So it went from a lot of these guys who are very close friends, and those guys who were very close friends still are close friends today. James Stewart has Studio 33 right around the corner from here. He was the other first-round pick in that inaugural season.
Little man.
Running back from Tennessee, absolutely. Tom McManus is doing this media thing, this podcasting thing with Team Tommy Mack, and we were out one night, and he had a bunch of former players there. And I just said, getting old isn't that bad. Because it's the opportunity to share memories and stories and laughter and relive some of those moments. So, pardon me, I went way off course with your question. But the relationship with the player started as peers, friends, and has grown into... Then there are some guys that will say, hey, what do you think about this? Did you see that story? What's your perspective on it? Because they know that I have seen every game the Jaguars have ever played, and I've been in the league for 30 years and in that locker room for 30 years. Know every player, know every coach, know every equipment guy and trainer and strength and conditioning guy who's ever been through there. So there's a pardon if this sounds braggadocious, there's a font of knowledge and a fair bit of wisdom that I can offer them.
Sure.
And it's interesting for me to look back at where I was and where I am. So,
well, you have a lay of the land that most people don't have, right? And you understand everything you just described. And, the relatability I think was clutch. And as the years went on, let me ask you this. How did media change? I mean, obviously we all know how it changed, but I mean, you used to be, and your position used to be how players were introduced outside of TV.
Yeah.
Now with social media, the introduction starts from the day they're announced at the podium, or if they're traded, or how they're brought into the organization. Did radio start to become further down that line?
It did.
And it start to become, now I don't like the word irrelevant. That's not the word I want to use, but did it become not as popular because the players felt they could take stuff into their own hands?
Listen, I'm a radio guy, okay? I grew up listening to KMOX, 1120 on your AM dial. It's one of the most powerful stations in America.
Okay.
It's a 50,000 watt clear channel station. I'm saying this guy used to listen to the Blues games and Jack Buck and Dan Kelly call, that was Cardinal games. Dan Kelly called the Blues games. I grew up as a radio guy. I tell you that so that you understand when I say that radio is almost irrelevant. It is. We live in an on-demand world, right? It started on a box on your television where you could go watch things that you recorded, and now it's all about podcasts like this, right? Even the radio broadcasters who have radio shows every day turn it into a podcast,
absolutely,
put it on social media, and that's where most people listen. We've gone away from the appointment, right? I'm going to go listen to this show at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to I'll listen to that show when I leave the office at 6:30 on my way home. I plug my phone into my car, I hit podcast, and away we go. So it pains me as somebody who, when I first moved to Jacksonville, rigged up an antenna in my garage in Atlantic Beach so that I could listen to KMOX in the summer, right?
Wow.
Because it gave me that flavor from home that I missed, and I could pick it up. That's how powerful it is.
Wow.
But it's not the same business anymore. So that's the first thing that stands out to me. The second is you mentioned players. It used to be a player would show up and they were a football player, right? That's not the case anymore. They show up and they're almost already a multimedia superstar is not the right word, but
personality.
A personality, right? There are players that have shown up in Jacksonville in recent years with their own production team, right? Who will chronicle them. The Jaguars, it was the rookie season of Trevor Lawrence. This is 2021. And the Jaguars had signed Marvin Jones, the wide receiver who came out of Syracuse and played for the Bengals and the Lions. And Marvin called a couple of the other receivers, and they all went up to a lake in Carolina where Trevor hosted them and they got to know each other. It was a bonding experience.
Okay.
People can find it if they Google, Trevor Lawrence, rookie season lake house. And it was a bonding experience. Well, that's the kind of thing that the Jaguars would have sent, 5 cameras to and spent a lot of time and effort to chronicle it so that we would have the story to tell in all of our shows across every platform. But we didn't get invited. Why? And I'm not bitter about this, by the way.
Sure.
Because Marvin Jones has his own production company. So Marvin brought his own cameras up, and they used it to their advantage on their social media channels to promote each other. They didn't need me or the Jaguars cameras to tell their story. They were going to do it their own way. That's how media's changed. Because now you have a microphone and a venue for yourself to be able to tell your story. You got to go build an audience, which you've done, right? But you can do that through social media. When I first came out of college, I had to go work for a radio station or a TV station or a newspaper, somewhere that had a printing press or a transmitter and a license. Now, because of my phone,
right,
because of podcasting, I can become a multimedia, millionaire overnight if I have a good idea and I know how to monetize it. And players have figured that out. So that's how media has really changed.
What I see is this personality persona is worth more than the actual player on the field.
Yeah.
And, what I also hear is that you've had a career. Well, it changed on you. We had some pivots in there and you had to adapt. And a lot of people, they get really, really set in their ways. They're having success. They don't want to change.
Right.
But the environment around them is changing.
Yeah.
And when you fail to change with that environment or pivot or move or adapt, it's going to pass you by.
Well, I didn't do a very good job of it at first. You mentioned I had 20 years as the voice of the Jaguars. And in 2014, if I can take my own narrative for a minute, the Jaguars had a new owner and they had a new radio station and they made a change. Now, they found a way to include me. They didn't want me to go anywhere. They appreciated my historical attachment to the franchise, the presence that I had built in the market, and the historical significance that I could bring, having seen every game. And I still, I do a couple of radio shows a week. They're actually podcasts now. I should know that. I do the preseason telecast. I do a lot of different things. But I struggled, mentally. I had put my identity into the voice of the Jaguars, and it was removed. And I didn't intend for it to be. It was not my intention for that to ever change.
So you had an identity change.
Yeah, I did. And I struggled with it. And I told you that when I moved to Florida, I brought a very specific vision. And when I was 25 years old, I could tell you exactly who I was, where I was going, and how I was going to get there. That was 25. At 45, when the Jaguars made the change in the broadcast production, I didn't all of a sudden know who I was. I wasn't sure where I was going. And if I don't know where I'm going, how in the hell am I going to get there? I wasn't sure of any of that. So you call that an identity crisis. I call it a lack of vision. Because what happened over those 20 years is I got comfortable. I loved the home and the job and the city and everything. I loved everything about being the voice of the Jaguars. I didn't want anything more. I wanted kids, and I have 3, almost grown sons, 18, 19, and 22. I have a beautiful wife. I'm from Kansas. I live in Atlantic Beach, Florida, right? You can kind of understand why I might be comfortable.
Right.
I had an NFL job. What happened was my vision stopped growing, or my original vision wasn't quite big enough. And so I was really satisfied with where I was at. And when the world changed on me, whoa, okay, hold on. I found a way to rationalize in my own mind. Well, my wife is a very successful realtor. Her business took off, coincidentally, in 2014 when the Jaguars made the change. I was able to be the scoutmaster, which I wasn't when I was traveling and doing radio shows every evening. I was able to be the football coach a couple of nights a week. And I have boys, and I really think it's important for fathers to be on the ground, hands-on with sons.
I agree.
You have a son, you know exactly what I'm talking
Absolutely.
about. Fathers and sons need to look each other in the eye. And I was able to do that. Meanwhile, my wife's business is raging, and I am learning all kinds of new things. All of a sudden, I was in a locker room post-game, which I had never been because I was always in the booth. I was on the sidelines during the game. And that was something that was new to me because I'd always been upstairs in the booth. I was trying new things and doing new things, and I tried to do my best, but I did struggle with the fact that why am I not in the booth?
Yeah.
Why do they have someone else instead of me?
And did you feel like that was I don't want to say like,
Say it.
okay. So I used to be at a big time lender, and then I had to resign because they were asking me to do things I didn't want to do. Not illegally, just move, uproot my family. And then I got out of this really large position. I found myself in a room with me and about 8 other people smaller than the room we're in right now. And it was a very humbling moment for me to sit there and recognize that. Did you kind of feel that way?
Did I feel sorry for myself?
Yeah, that's kind of,
I did. Yeah, listen, you'll know I'm transparent.
Yeah.
Ask anything. I'll give you an answer whether you want it or not. There were times where I did. Now, I didn't want anyone to see that, right? I'm sure they did. When they put me on an airplane right across the aisle from Frank, who replaced me, it was hard for me. But I wanted the connection because I knew it was still good for me. It was still part of who I was. And I deluded myself at times into thinking eventually they're going to understand that I belong in that booth. But it hasn't happened. So clearly I was wrong about that. And I had to grow through those situations. Yes, there were moments where I'm like, why am I holding a microphone on the sideline? Right? I was field producing Jags Wired, our behind the scenes look. But here I am. I'm used to being up in the booth and I'm holding a microphone, like a tech guy. I'm listening to what they're saying, and it helps me do my job to write the show that I hosted. And when I looked at it, globally like that, I could justify it. But on game day, when I would walk by and people would say, "Hey, Brian," and I'd think, gosh, this is embarrassing that people see me on the sideline holding a microphone and not being up in the booth. So yes, that was a very humbling opportunity for me. But a good friend of mine, coach named Mark Collins, who was our linebackers coach here for a few years ago, recently shared with me a formula for success that he gives to every player he ever coaches. And now he coaches NFL officials. Okay. And he gives them the exact same formula. It's called H2O, right? And he came up with that because water is essential for life, right? He believes that humility and hunger plus outworking everybody, H2O, is the formula. And
love that.
And I said to him, I said, why didn't you give this to me years ago? He goes, I didn't know you needed it, right? But the humility and the hunger returned. Eventually, the hunger came back. And I started doing the preseason telecasts and started to get back on my feet again. And then just recently, I feel like I have worked hard to get to a point where I was ready for that sort of next vision of life. Yeah. But for 10 years, the title of my presentation is called Finding Your Frequency, right? And if you know anything about a radio wave, right, it's sent out by a transmitter that oscillates 104.5 FM. And I'm saying this and I'm thinking some people who are listening are like, FM, AM, what's that? Right? Because we know about radio, right?
Could be, yes.
So it oscillates at a frequency from the transmitter at 104 million cycles a second, right? If it's 104.5, which is WOKV in town. And then it's got to be caught by a transmitter over here at the exact same frequency. So, you tune in a radio, for people who are old enough to remember that, it would be static, 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 static. And then at 104.3, maybe you'd start to hear the signal clearly. And then 104.5, boom, it was crystal clear. 104.7, if you go too far, you're back to the static. I learned to dial in who I was again and where I wanted to go now, which is critical. And then how do I get there? And I applied some lessons that I've learned from 30 years of being around men like Tom Coughlin and Tony Baselli, right? Great coaches, great players, and great businessmen who've been in that building too. I don't want to take anything away from them. I leaned into what I had learned and dialed in my frequency.
Started to find your frequency.
Yeah, I started to find it, which is why I'm here today. I dialed it in and I ended up at the Bank Theater not long ago. Impressive place, by the way.
Well, thank you very much.
Your move from the big bank to a room with just a few guys has turned out, I'm going to guess, knowing you just a little bit, to be a dream job.
It did. It absolutely did. Absolutely. And the thing about finding your frequency, what I love about this is that you don't have to be a radio. You got noise in social media today.
Yeah.
We got noise in the regular media. You've got noise amongst friends and family. You've got to find your frequency. You've got to find the clarity.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about here. Clarity of what is going to be your vision. And I love the fact that you were able to, I'm going to call it what it is, redefine yourself. Yeah. Find that clarity, find that vision, and you are so dialed in. You are locked in. And I think that, no matter what age you are, what generation you're in, you're either going through something right now.
Yeah.
You've been challenged. You either overcome it or you haven't. Most people don't. They're still dealing with it, right? you got to find that clarity. You got to find that frequency. And I love this message that you have. And more people need to hear it, which is why you're on here today.
There's a gentleman that I had met all the years going over to London named Richard Dean. And Rich is a phenomenal sports performance coach, right? I don't want to just say sports psychologist because that isn't enough. He doesn't just work with the mind. He helps connect your mind to your body, okay? He is a gifted human being. And he said to me, you look like you could use a little help. Wow. And I said, you're very astute. So we spent hours on the side of the practice field talking about what I was trying to do. And he said, your problem is you have looked at yourself through the lens of failure. And I looked at him and said, I haven't thought of myself as a failure. He said, really? He said, you stayed in a place for 10 years where every day you looked at the job that was yours, at the identity that was yours, at the personality that was yours, and you recognized it wasn't, and you blamed yourself. I said, how did you know that? He said, I've been listening, Brian. You talk for a living. Shut up and listen a little bit. And that was the genesis of finding your frequency. And the Jaguars franchise will always be a bedrock part of who I am. But I'm transitioning out of that now. That's no longer who I fundamentally am. It isn't what I do. It's just part of what I do.
It's not going to define you.
No, I'm going to redefine myself. And all I had to do was to take the time, and it does take time, to sit and think about, who am I? Who am I really? What are the things that are important to me? Am I living a purposeful life as Brian Sexton? Am I going to be who I am on purpose, as Dr. Phil likes to say, right? You're damn right I am, right? And when I wrote that out, and I showed it to my wife, she's like, wow. I went, get to page 4. Wait till you see the part about you and me and the tennis rackets, right? I mean, it energized me, and I get up every day with a sense of, let's go attack the day, right?
Love that.
You are one badass, go and be badass. Own the day.
Love it.
And I hadn't done that in a long time. It feels good.
It's good. You can tell.
I want to grab my phone.
Yeah.
I want to show you something. So 10 years ago, in January of 2014, I'm very involved with the Scouts, as I told you. I was hosting our Cub Scout pack at Daytona for Scout Days.
Okay.
It was loud because it was the 24-hour race. They didn't stop. It was cold because it was January. There was nor'easter going on. And there were a bunch of first, second, and third graders going around. It was a very painful weekend. I got up on Sunday morning, and it was calm. Man, I packed my car so fast. I mean, I had the tent down, the boys in the back. My boys were 7 and 9. Went under the Speedway, down Speedway Boulevard, got on I-95, started heading north. Called my wife, hey, we're going to make Mass at St. Paul's, which is Jack's Beach, which I know is a place that you're fond of.
That's where our family goes.
Home. So she's talking, and I see something coming at my car. And I said, hold on a second. She goes, what? I said, there's something coming at my car. She said, what? Well, I'm going to show you, and maybe we can
we'll
put this in at some point.
Put it in there.
Hold on. What did I just do? That's a pair of
Holy
pliers that came through my windshield at 85 miles an hour.
That came off the back of a vehicle, apparently.
Must have.
Holy
right?
cow.
The state trooper shows up and says, that's Final Destination kind of stuff right
No
there.
kidding.
At which point, I started doing this.
Sure.
Right? I mean, fight or flight syndrome, I was ready to fight for my boys. We had a sheen of glass over us. What you can't see is that those pliers were coming through my forehead. They were held into the windshield by about an inch of the rubber grip, but they were pointed right at my forehead. If the grip doesn't catch it, I'm not here today. And I have an 18 and a 19-year-old whose lives were cut short, right? We all die because I roll over the car and it's a bad day. So I say to people, I didn't know at the time what the message was, but I sure as heck knew who the message was from. That led me on a path of discovery, right? Where I realized that what happened was the Jaguars thing was taken out of the center of my life, and God put himself in the center of my life. So when I look at where I'm at right now and why I am so excited, if I had a pair of pliers and it took the pliers to get the message through, then what I'm really trying to do is tell people, you have opportunity. You have a day in front of you. Get up and attack the day. I don't mean anxiously.
Sure.
I mean with energy, with enthusiasm. Don't make God send a pair of pliers through your windshield to get your attention and say, hey, you got to dial things in a little bit.
He's got a way of doing that.
Hell, it took me 10 years to get there, right?
He's got a way of
but
doing
I
that.
finally got there, and those pliers are in my car today and to this day to remind me.
Love that.
You are blessed to be here. Go and take the message to others about taking back their life.
Man, that's fantastic.
Don't make God send the pliers for you, right? Go through my story right here. It's going to be great.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if you want to take a look at that, that'll be on our YouTube channel at What's Your One More. Check that out. It'll be in our show notes, as well as the next thing we're going to talk about. Brian, you need to get this message out to more people. We need to get beyond Jacksonville, right? So how does a listener that's listening to this that lives anywhere in the United States, or we have listeners in New Zealand and Australia, you want to have Brian come talk to your group. You want to help your group find their frequency.
Right.
How do they do it?
So I'm going to be old school with you. It's Brian at briansexton.net.
Alrighty.
That's the email. And if you send me an email, I promise I will reply. Brian at briansexton.net.
You can also find that at briansexton.net on the internet. You can go there. He has everything on that website that you need to book or to get in touch with him. It's on there. That also will be on our YouTube channel. What's Your One More? It'll be in our show notes on every platform you listen to. And Brian, hey, this was needed today. I appreciate you being here. I hope our audience eats this up. I know they will. Guys, we are anticipating your feedback. Please leave some comments. Listen to this on every podcast platform you're on. 5-star review it. Leave some comments on there for us, as well as our social media at What's Your One More. And till the next episode, guys, we'll see you. Brian, thank you so much for being on here.
Thanks for having me.
Congrats. And
I'm grateful for your time.
Looking forward to hearing more and having you back once you climb that mountain.
Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it, yeah.